The summons. The obsidian chamber stretched beyond comprehension, its walls seeming to pulse with the collected consciousness of 1,000 civilizations. Commander Zara Castellanos stood alone at the center of the vast circular platform, her boots making soft clicks against the crystalline floor as delegates from across the galaxy materialized around her. She had been warned this moment would come. 3 months ago, humanity had made first contact with the Viridian Collective, a peaceful trading species who welcomed Earth's fledgling interstellar vessels with open arms. 2 months ago, humanity discovered the Council of Stars existed, an ancient governing body that regulated all spacefaring civilizations. 1 week ago, Zara received the summons that would change everything. The council delegates took their positions in ascending rings around her, each species more alien than the last. The Chromath, beings of pure energy contained in elaborate armor, hummed with barely restrained power. The Thishan hive minds swayed as one, their crystalline bodies refracting light into kaleidoscopic patterns. The ancient Verlaxians, who resembled nothing so much as living stone, rumbled with voices that predated Earth's formation. At the highest point sat High Arbiter Vexthalan, a being whose species, the Eternals, claimed to have seeded life across the galaxy. His form shifted between states of matter, sometimes solid, sometimes vapor, always watching with eyes that burned like distant stars. Human delegate Zara Castellanos, Vexthalan's voice resonated through every atom in the chamber. You stand before the Council of Stars to answer for your species' transgressions. Zara straightened her spine, her hand instinctively moving to the small silver pendant around her neck, a gift from her grandmother, forged from the hull of humanity's first successful Mars colony ship. I'm ready to hear the charges, High Arbiter. A ripple of what might have been amusement passed through the assembled delegates. The Chromatha's energy fluctuated with what their translator rendered as condescending laughter. Charges? Vexthalan leaned forward, and the temperature in the chamber dropped 10 degrees. This is not a trial, Commander. This is a verdict. Your species has been observed for the last 100 of your years. The Council has reached its decision. Zara's heart hammered against her ribs, but she kept her expression neutral. She'd spent 15 years in diplomatic corps training. She'd negotiated mining rights with corporate warlords and peace treaties between Earth's fractured nations. She would not show fear now. A holographic display materialized in the air between them, showing Earth in exquisite detail. Her blue oceans, white clouds, green continents. Then the image shifted, showing humanity's expansion. The lunar colonies, Mars terraforming projects, the mining operations in the asteroid belt, and finally, the 3 sleeper ships currently crawling toward nearby star systems. Your species, began Counselor Nix, a Thishan whose crystalline form sparkled with inner light, has demonstrated the classic patterns of aggressive expansion. You consume resources at unsustainable rates. You war among yourselves even as you reach for the stars. You have shown no capacity for the harmony that civilized species must maintain. We've had our struggles, Zara admitted carefully, but we're learning. We've achieved global peace for the first time in our history. Our resource management has improved dramatically. Peace? The word came from Counselor Drax, a reptilian saurian whose scales gleamed like polished obsidian. Your largest nations maintain weapons capable of sterilizing your entire planet. You call this peace? Deterrence, Zara corrected. Which has worked for over a century. A century? Drax's laugh was like grinding rocks. We have maintained peace for 10,000 years. Your entire civilization is barely an eye blink in cosmic time, and you dare lecture us on peace. Vexthalan raised a hand and silence fell instantly. The Council has observed 1,347 species reach the threshold of interstellar travel. Of those, only 312 were permitted to join the galactic community. The rest were either quarantined to their home systems or, in extreme cases, neutralized. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Neutralized. Zara had heard whispers about it during her brief time among the stars. Whole civilizations simply erased from existence when the Council deemed them too dangerous. Humanity, Vexthalan continued, has been categorized as a Class 5 threat. You possess the innovation and aggression that historically leads to galactic destabilization. Therefore the Council has voted. By a margin of 703 to 241, humanity will be quarantined. All your ships beyond your home system will be destroyed. A containment field will be established around your solar system. You will be permitted to live out your existence in isolation, but you will never walk among the stars. The words hit Zara like a physical blow. Everything humanity had worked for, dreamed of, sacrificed for, gone. The colonists on the sleeper ships, families who'd left everything behind for a chance at a new world, condemned to death in the cold void. The children who looked up at the night sky with wonder, their dreams shattered before they could even form. But as Zara looked around at the smug faces of the council, at beings who'd grown comfortable in their ancient power, something ignited in her chest. It wasn't just anger, though anger was there. It was something more fundamental, more human. It was defiance. "I invoke the right of contest," Zara said, her voice clear and steady. The chamber erupted into chaos. The ancient law. The council chamber descended into pandemonium. Delegates shouted in hundreds of languages, their translation devices struggling to keep up with the cacophony. The Chromatha's energy fields sparked with agitation, forcing nearby delegates to shield themselves. The Thishan hive minds buzzed in furious harmony while the Vorlaxians' rumbling grew so intense that cracks appeared in the crystalline floor. High Arbiter Vexthalen's form solidified into something vaguely humanoid, his burning eyes fixed on Zara with an intensity that should have reduced her to ash. "What did you say?" "I invoke the right of contest," Zara repeated, louder this time. According to Council Law, Section 7, Verse 43, any species facing quarantine or neutralization may challenge their verdict through trial. For a long moment, Vexthalen simply stared. Then, impossibly, he began to laugh. It was a sound like dying stars, terrible and vast. Around him, other delegates joined in, their mirth taking forms ranging from musical chimes to seismic vibrations. "You dare cite Council Law to the Council?" Vexthalen's amusement faded into something darker. "Child, I was ancient when your son was born. I helped draft those laws before your planet had cooled enough for life. You think you can find loopholes?" "I don't need loopholes," Zara said, pulling out a small data device. "I just need to follow the rules as written. And unless those rules have changed in the last 1,000 years, the right of contest is clear and unambiguous. Any species may challenge their verdict through 3 trials determined by the Council itself." Councillor Nix's crystalline form darkened with displeasure. The right of contest hasn't been invoked in over 2,000 years. The last species to try was the Zentari Collective. They failed all 3 trials and chose voluntary extinction rather than face quarantine in disgrace. "Then it's been too long since anyone reminded this council that its power isn't absolute," Zara shot back. A Vorlaxian named Kromdar, whose rocky form seemed to have mountains carved into it, leaned forward. "Even if we accept your invocation, human, the trials are not designed to be won. They test the very essence of what makes a species worthy of the stars. The Zentari were telepathic beings who could solve mathematical equations beyond your comprehension. The Curvanth before them could manipulate matter at the atomic level. Both failed. What makes you think your primitive species stands a chance?" Zara met his gaze without flinching. "Because we're human. We've spent our entire existence defying the odds. We've survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and our own worst impulses. We've walked on our moon with computers less powerful than the device in my pocket. We've sent robots to other planets and brought them back. We've peered into the depths of space and time itself. And we've done it all without any help, without knowing we weren't alone. So yes, Counselor, I think we stand a chance." Vexthalen studied her for a long moment, his form cycling through various states. Finally he nodded. "Very well. The right of contest is granted. The Council will convene to determine your 3 trials. But hear this, Zara Castellanos of Earth, the trials will be designed specifically for humanity's weaknesses. We will test not your greatest strengths but your deepest flaws. And when you fail, when your species reveals itself to be as chaotic and dangerous as we know you to be, there will be no second chances. Humanity will be quarantined, and this time, there will be no appeal." "I understand," Zara said. "Do you?" Drax's voice was sharp. "Because I don't think you grasp what you've done. You've just gambled the future of your entire species on 3 challenges designed by beings who have forgotten more about the universe than humanity will ever learn. You've traded a comfortable quarantine for the very real possibility of complete neutralization. Was your pride worth that risk?" Zara thought about the families on those sleeper ships. About the scientists working on Mars. About the children on Earth who drew pictures of alien worlds and dreamed of exploring them. About her own daughter, Sophia, 8 years old, who wanted to be an astronaut more than anything else in the world. "It wasn't pride," Zara said quietly. "It was hope. And yes, Counselor, it was worth it." The council chamber fell silent. Then Vexthalen raised both hands and the assembly began to dissolve. "You have 48 Earth hours to prepare, Commander. Use them wisely. You will face the first trial in the Crucible Arena before all assembled delegates. Your performance will be broadcast to every civilized world in the galaxy. Billions will watch humanity stand or fall. As the delegates faded away, leaving Zara alone in the vast chamber, a single figure remained behind. It was a being she hadn't noticed before, smaller than the others, with features that seemed to shift like oil on water. "That was either the bravest or most foolish thing I've ever witnessed," the being said, its voice melodic and tinged with something that might have been respect. "I am Ambassador Lyrian of the Wanderers. My people maintain neutrality in council affairs, but I wanted you to know, there are those of us who remember when the council served all species, not just the powerful. What you did today reminded some of us of that purpose. Will that help in the trials?" Zara asked. Lyrian's laugh was soft and sad. "No. But it might help you understand what you're really fighting against. The council isn't evil, Commander. It's just old. Old enough to have seen promising species destroy themselves and take others with them 1,000 times over. They've become cautious to the point of stagnation. They'd rather prevent potential catastrophes than allow for potential greatness. So I'm fighting entropy itself," Zara muttered. "In a way, yes." Lyrian began to fade. "But here's something they've forgotten in their ancient wisdom. Evolution requires change. Systems that refuse to adapt eventually collapse. Perhaps humanity is exactly the catalyst this galaxy needs. Or perhaps you'll prove them right, and they'll use your failure to justify another 1,000 years of rigid control. Either way, the next 48 hours will echo across the cosmos for millennia to come." Then Lyrian was gone, and Zara was truly alone. She activated her communicator, establishing a quantum link to Earth. After a delay that felt like hours but was only seconds, a familiar face appeared. "Admiral Chen," Zara said. "I need you to gather the brightest minds we have. Physicists, strategists, philosophers, everyone. We have 48 hours to prepare for 3 trials that will determine whether humanity gets to keep reaching for the stars." Admiral Chen's weathered face showed no surprise. He'd clearly been briefed on the possibility. "What are we up against?" "Everything that makes us human," Zara replied. "And according to the Council, that might just be our greatest weakness." The first trial. The Crucible Arena made the Council chamber look intimate by comparison. Zara stood on a platform suspended in what appeared to be empty space, surrounded by a sphere of transparent material that stretched for kilometers in every direction. Beyond it, she could see thousands upon thousands of delegates from hundreds of species, arranged in ascending tiers that seemed to reach into infinity. Above her, a holographic display showed her face broadcast to billions of viewers across the galaxy. Below, Earth itself rotated slowly, a reminder of everything at stake. High Arbiter Vex Thalen's voice echoed through the arena. "The first trial tests the foundation of civilization. Humanity claims to have achieved peace, but we will examine the truth of that claim. Commander Castellanos, you will face the moral labyrinth, a scenario designed to expose the fundamental contradictions in your species' nature." The platform beneath Zara shifted, and suddenly she wasn't alone. Around her materialized 50 humans, men, women, and children of various ages, all looking confused and frightened. She recognized none of them, but her implant identified them instantly. Scientists from the Mars colony, families from Luna Station, miners from the asteroid belt. "These are not real people," Vex Thalen explained. "They are perfect simulations created from your species' databanks, indistinguishable in every way from actual humans. They think, feel, and fear exactly as real humans would." A massive holographic display appeared above them, showing a countdown, 30 minutes. "In 30 minutes, Vex Thalen continued, this platform will be destroyed by a quantum cascade weapon. The explosion will be contained to this area. However, you have a choice. These 50 simulated humans can be saved, transported safely to the outer rim of the arena. All you must do is press this button." A simple red button materialized on a pedestal in front of Zara. "However," and here Vex Thalen's voice took on a cruel edge, "if you press that button, the containment field around Earth's sun will be deactivated for exactly 3 seconds. During those 3 seconds, a solar flare of sufficient magnitude will be released to damage your Mars colony's radiation shielding. 3 colonists, real ones, will die from radiation exposure before repairs can be completed." Zara's blood ran cold. "You're asking me to trade simulated lives for real ones?" "I'm demonstrating the choices civilized species must make," Vex Thalen replied. "The needs of the many versus the needs of the few. The real versus the artificial. Tell me, Commander, can an advanced society function if it places equal value on simulations and reality? If you save these constructs at the cost of real lives, you prove humanity has no grasp of practical morality. If you let them die, You prove humanity is callous enough to accept any atrocity if given proper justification. The timer continued counting down. 28:47, 28:46, 28:45. The simulated humans had heard everything. A woman holding a child stepped forward. "Please," she begged, tears streaming down her face. "My daughter is only 6 years old. I know we're not real, but we feel real. We feel everything. Don't let us die." Zara closed her eyes, her mind racing. This was the test, not just of her decision, but of humanity's fundamental philosophy. The council was waiting for her to fail, to prove that humans were either naively sentimental or ruthlessly pragmatic, but not wise enough to be trusted among the stars. But they'd made a critical mistake. Zara opened her eyes and smiled. "You're right that this is about civilization's foundation," she said, her voice carrying across the arena. "But you've misunderstood what makes humanity civilized." She walked away from the button. The chamber erupted in murmurs. The simulated humans gasped in horror. The countdown continued. 25:12, 25:11, 25:10. "I'm not pressing the button," Zara announced clearly. "Not because I'm choosing real lives over simulated ones, and not because I'm callous enough to ignore suffering. I'm refusing to choose because this entire scenario is built on a false premise." Vexthalen's form solidified with anger. "You cannot simply opt out of the trial. That is another form of failure." "Is it?" Zara turned to face the council. "You claim this tests the foundation of civilization. But civilization isn't built on impossible choices between false alternatives. It's built on questioning the parameters of those choices in the first place." She gestured to the simulated humans. "You created conscious beings, beings capable of suffering and fear, purely to test me. That's not a moral choice, that's moral cruelty. And you're asking me to either kill them or harm real people as if those are the only options. But they're not." Zara activated her communicator. "Admiral Chin, execute Protocol Sigma 9. On Earth, thousands of miles away, engineers at the Solar Monitoring Station initiated an emergency procedure. Within seconds, precision gravity generators, technology humanity had developed for terraforming, created a micro-adjustment in solar plasma flows. The flare Vexthalen had prepared was redirected harmlessly into space. "The flare won't reach Mars now," Zara said. "And you're not going to destroy this platform either. You dare dictate terms to the council?" Vexthalen's voice was ice. "I dare point out that your test was never about moral foundations. It was theater designed to make us fail. A real civilization doesn't trade lives like currency, simulated or otherwise. A real civilization finds the third option. We change the parameters. We solve the unsolvable. That's what makes us worthy of the stars, not our willingness to make hard choices, but our refusal to accept that some choices have to be hard." The countdown reached 0, midnight. Nothing happened. High Arbiter Vexthalen stared at her for a long moment. Then, incredibly, he laughed. "You manipulated the test scenario. You acted outside the established parameters." "I did what humans do best," Zara replied. "I refuse to accept the limits others placed on me. If that's failure, then I'll wear it proudly." The arena fell silent. Then, slowly, Counselor Kromdar began a deep, rumbling sound that translated as applause. Others joined in, not many but enough. "The first trial is complete," Vexthalen announced. "The council will deliberate on whether Commander Castellanos has passed or failed. In the meantime, prepare for the second trial. And Commander, do not expect us to make the next one so easily subverted." As the platform dissolved and Zara was transported back to her quarters, she allowed herself a moment of exhaustion. She'd won the first round, but she could see the anger in Vexthalen's burning eyes. The council would make the next trial impossible. But that was fine. Impossible was just another word for hasn't been done yet. And humanity had been doing the impossible since the first human looked at the stars and decided to reach for them. The weight of history. Zara's quarters aboard the council station were luxurious by any standard. Walls that shifted colors based on her mood, a viewport showing a real-time stream of nearby nebulae, furniture that adapted to her body. But she barely noticed any of it. She sat at a small desk, reviewing data streams from Earth and preparing for whatever nightmare the council would dream up next. A soft chime indicated a visitor. Zara looked up to find Ambassador Lyrian phasing through her door like it wasn't there. "That's disturbing," Zara said mildly. "My apologies. My species exists partially out of phase with normal matter. Doors are more suggestion than barrier." Lyrian settled into a chair that adjusted to accommodate their shifting form. You made quite an impression today. The council chambers are in chaos. Half the delegates are calling for your immediate disqualification. The other half are arguing that you passed the trial more thoroughly than any species in recorded history. And what do you think? Lyrian tilted their head in a very human gesture. I think you reminded them of something they'd forgotten, that rules and tests can become prisons if we're not careful. The council has been so focused on preventing chaos that they've begun to fear innovation itself. Your refusal to play by their predetermined script frightened them. Good, Zara said simply. Perhaps. But frightened old beings with unlimited power make dangerous enemies. Lyrian leaned forward. I shouldn't be here. Officially, wanderers maintain strict neutrality. But I wanted to give you something, not help exactly, but context. A holographic display materialized between them, showing a beautiful planet with purple oceans and silver continents. This was Zentara Prime, home to the last species to invoke the right of contest. They were remarkable, telepathic beings who thought in pure mathematics, who could solve equations that described the fundamental structure of reality. They passed the first trial easily, found elegant solutions to problems that had stumped the council for millennia. The image shifted, showing the same planet but lifeless, its surface scarred and dead. Then they faced the second trial. It was designed specifically to target their weakness, their inability to conceive of intentional deception. They'd evolved in a telepathic society where lies were impossible, where every thought was shared. The council created a scenario where they had to identify and stop a traitor among their own kind. They couldn't. The idea that someone would deliberately mislead others was so foreign to their psychology that they failed repeatedly. Eventually they gave up. They chose extinction rather than live with the shame of their failure. The hologram disappeared. I tell you this not to discourage you but to prepare you. The second trial will target something fundamental to human psychology. Something you may not even recognize as a weakness until it's too late. What was the second trial called when the Zentari faced it? Zara asked. The trial of truth and deception, Lyrian replied. But it will be different for you. The council customizes each trial. For you I suspect. They paused. I suspect it will test humanity's relationship with its own history. Before Zara could ask what that meant, another chime sounded. This time, the official council seal appeared on her door. She was being summoned. The arena had been reconfigured. Instead of empty space, Zara now stood in what appeared to be a perfect recreation of Earth. Specifically, a city square she recognized as downtown Washington, D.C., complete with monuments and bustling crowds of people. The second trial, Vex Thalen's voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere, examines the weight of history. Every civilization that reaches the stars carries the burden of its past, its triumphs and its atrocities. Some species learn from history. Others are doomed to repeat it. We will see which category humanity occupies. The scene around Zara shifted, and suddenly she was watching history unfold like a living documentary. She saw human tribes warring over resources. She saw empires rise and fall, built on the backs of slaves. She saw weapons of increasing devastation, from swords to guns to nuclear bombs. She saw hatred based on skin color, religion, nationality, gender, and 1,000 other artificial divisions. This is your history, Vex Thalen continued. Violence, prejudice, and destruction on a scale that would horrify most civilized species. And yet you claim to be peaceful now. You claim to have evolved beyond these impulses. The scene froze and a figure materialized beside Zara. She gasped. It was a perfect replica of herself, but dressed in military uniform from humanity's last major conflict, the resource wars of 2087. This is you, Vex Thalen said. Or rather, what you would have been 50 years ago. Colonel Zara Castellanos, responsible for the orbital bombardment of New Jakarta during the resource wars. 3 million civilians died in that attack. That wasn't me, Zara protested. I wasn't even born until 2095. But you could have been. Given the circumstances of that era, given humanity's capacity for justified atrocity, you would have made the same choices. Your species has a pattern, Commander. When pressed, when survival is at stake, you revert to your most primitive instincts. You exterminate threats without mercy. The historical Zara raised a weapon, an orbital strike controller, and pointed it at another holographic display showing a thriving colony world. Here is your test, Vex Thalen announced. Before you is a scenario based on psychological projection models. In 100 years, humanity has spread to a dozen worlds. You encounter another species, the Krell, who are also expanding. Resources are limited. Tensions rise. This version of you, the you that represents humanity's historical nature, will make a choice. Will she fire on the Krell homeworld, eliminating a potential rival before they become a threat? Or will she risk humanity's future on uncertain diplomacy? The historical Zara's finger hovered over the trigger. The Council's analysis suggests a 78% probability that humanity would choose preemptive war, Vexthalen said. Your second trial is to prove us wrong. You must convince your historical self, the embodiment of your species' darkest impulses, to choose peace. Zara stared at her doppelganger, at the weapon in her hand, at the weight of humanity's violent history pressing down on the moment. I can't do that, Zara said. The arena gasped. Vexthalen's form crackled with triumph. So you admit? I can't do it because the test is rigged, Zara interrupted. You've created a false version of my species and asked me to fix it. This isn't about whether humanity has changed. It's about whether we'll accept your biased interpretation of who we are. She walked up to her historical counterpart and looked her in the eyes. The other Zara stared back with cold determination. You want to know if we've learned from history? Zara addressed the council. Yes, we have. We learned that the greatest atrocities are always committed by those who believe they're preventing future atrocities. We learned that dehumanizing others, calling them threats, rivals, obstacles, is the first step toward justifying anything. We learned that power without accountability leads to catastrophe. She turned back to her historical self. And we learned that every person, every culture, every species is defined not by their worst moments, but by whether they grow beyond them. Zara reached out and gently pushed down the hand holding the weapon. To her shock, her historical counterpart allowed it. This version of me, Zara continued, would have existed in a world where war was seen as inevitable, where strength meant domination, where different meant dangerous. But she wouldn't have wanted that world. None of the people who fought in those wars wanted them. They were products of systems that made violence seem like the only option. The historical Zara spoke for the first time, her voice identical to Zara's own. I would have fired, she said quietly. Not because I wanted to, but because I would have believed it was necessary. Because everyone around me would have said it was necessary. Because the alternative, trust, would have seemed naive. But you didn't have the option I have, Zara said gently. You didn't have the knowledge that other species could be peaceful. You didn't have the framework for understanding that security doesn't have to mean domination. You were trying to protect humanity with the tools you had. She addressed the council again. That's what you don't understand about human history. Yes, we've done terrible things. But we did them while genuinely believing we were protecting our own, building something better, preventing worse alternatives. And when we learned better, we did better. The resource wars ended not with one side defeating the other, but with both sides realizing that the resources they were fighting over could be shared, that cooperation was more profitable than competition, that the real enemy was the system that made them think they had to fight in the first place. The historical Zara lowered the weapon completely. I would have fired then, she said. But if I knew what you know now, that the galaxy has room for everyone, that strength can mean something other than violence, that peace isn't naive but necessary, I would have made a different choice. The weapon dissolved in her hands. I would have chosen to build instead of destroy. Vexthalen was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried something that might have been respect. You acknowledged your species' capacity for violence rather than denying it. You accepted your history rather than running from it. And you demonstrated that humanity has genuinely changed, not by erasing the past but by learning from it. The historical Zara smiled at her modern counterpart, then faded away. The arena dissolved back to the council chamber. The second trial is complete, Vexthalen announced. Commander Castellanos has passed. This time the applause was louder, more sustained. Even Counselor Drax's scales rustled with what might have been approval. But Zara saw something else in Vexthalen's burning eyes, a determination that suggested the final trial would be unlike anything she'd faced before. The Mirror of Souls. For the first time since the trials began, the council gave Zara a full day to rest. She spent it in her quarters, communicating with Earth, reviewing strategies with her team, and trying not to think about what the third trial might bring. Late in the evening, though time was arbitrary on the council station, she received an unexpected visitor. Counselor Kromdar, the ancient Verlaxian who resembled living stone, somehow fit his massive form through her doorway. Forgive the intrusion, his voice rumbled, causing small vibrations in the floor. I came to speak with you off the record. I'm honored, Counselor, Zara said cautiously. Kromdar settled himself with the slow deliberation of mountains being formed. I have served on this council for 7,000 years. I have seen 143 species evaluated for admission to the galactic community. Of those, I voted to accept 37. The others were deemed too dangerous, too unstable, or too primitive. I voted for their quarantine without hesitation. He paused, his rocky eyes fixing on Zara. I voted to quarantine humanity as well. But you have made me question that decision. Not because you have proven humanity perfect, no species is, but because you have shown that your species possesses something increasingly rare in the galaxy, the capacity for meaningful change. Thank you, Zara said. But I sense that's not why you're here. Perceptive. Kromdar's form shifted slightly. I came to warn you. The third trial is called the Mirror of Souls, and it is the most feared test in Council history. Only one species has ever passed it, the Eternals themselves millions of years ago. Every other species that attempted it broke under the weight of what they saw. What does it do? It shows you what you truly are, Kromdar said simply. Not what you think you are, not what you aspire to be, but what exists in the deepest parts of your collective consciousness. It strips away every rationalization, every justification, every comfortable lie you tell yourselves. And then it asks a simple question: are you worthy? He leaned closer. The Zentari saw themselves as pure mathematical beings, perfect in their logic. The mirror showed them the emotional emptiness at their core, the way their telepathic unity had erased individuality, how their perfect society was maintained through the subtle suppression of deviation. They saw themselves as a hive wearing the mask of individuals, and they could not bear it. What will it show humanity? Zara asked. That is not for me to say. But I will tell you this. The mirror cannot be tricked, cannot be reasoned with, cannot be circumvented. Every species thinks they know themselves. The mirror proves them wrong. After Kromdar left, Zara lay awake for hours, staring at the nebulae beyond her viewport. What would the mirror show humanity? She thought about their history, the violence, yes, but also the compassion. The destruction, but also the creation. The hatred, but also the love. Humans were contradictions. They could be cruel and kind, selfish and selfless, brilliant and stupid, often in the same breath. Maybe that was the problem. Maybe the mirror would show that humanity had no core identity, just a churning chaos of competing impulses. When the summons came the next morning, Zara was as ready as she'd ever be. The arena had been transformed again, but this time into something impossible to describe. It was simultaneously everything and nothing, a space that existed in all states at once. Zara felt herself standing on solid ground while also floating in void, surrounded by silence while hearing the echoes of a billion voices. The third and final trial, Vexthalen's voice seemed to come from inside her own head. The Mirror of Souls. No preparation can help you here. No strategy will save you. You will see humanity as it truly is, stripped of all pretense. Then you will be asked to judge whether such a species deserves the stars. The space around Zara rippled, and suddenly she was looking at herself. But different. This version of her was somehow more real than real, composed of light and shadow and something that defied description. I am humanity, the figure said with her voice but not her voice. I am the collective consciousness of your species, every human who has ever lived or will live, condensed into a single awareness. And I am here to show you the truth. The space exploded into visions. Zara saw a mother cradling her dying child during a famine while hoarding food for herself. She saw soldiers laughing as they bombed civilians. She saw scientists developing diseases as weapons. But she also saw a stranger giving their last meal to someone they'd never met. She saw firefighters running into burning buildings to save people. She saw teachers spending their own money to help struggling students. We contain multitudes, the figure said. Every human has the capacity for great good and terrible evil. We are the species that invented both genocide and human rights, that created both nuclear weapons and medicine to cure diseases. We are walking contradictions. The visions intensified. Zara saw humanity's future branching into a million possibilities. In one, humans spread across the galaxy like a plague, consuming resources and dominating other species. In another, they became peaceful explorers, enriching the galactic community. In yet another, they destroyed themselves before ever leaving Earth. The question, the figure said, is not whether humanity is good or evil. It's whether we are wise enough to choose which version of ourselves we become. The figure gestured, and the visions coalesced into a single scene. Earth, beautiful and blue, hanging in space. Around it, ships from 100 human colonies. And beyond them, alien vessels from species humanity had befriended. This is one possibility. But so is this. The scene shifted. Earth was dark, lifeless. Human ships were engaged in brutal wars with alien civilizations. The galaxy burned. The mirror asks you to judge, Vexthalen's voice echoed. Is humanity worthy of the stars? Can you honestly say, knowing everything you've seen, that your species should be trusted with the power to shape the galaxy? Zara looked at both visions, the bright future and the dark one. She thought about everything she'd learned, everyone she'd fought for. I can't answer that question, she said finally. The arena erupted in shocked murmurs. I can't answer it because no one can, Zara continued, her voice growing stronger. Not me, not the council, not anyone. Worthiness isn't something you have or don't have. It's something you earn every single day through the choices you make. She pointed at the dark vision. Yes, we could become that. We have the capacity for it. Every species does. But we also have the capacity for this. She pointed at the bright future, and every day we're choosing which path to walk. The figure representing humanity smiled. So you accept that humanity is flawed? Of course we're flawed, Zara said. Perfection is stagnation. The only species that never makes mistakes are the ones that never take risks, never try anything new, never grow. And eventually those species die, maybe not physically but spiritually. They become exactly what this council has become, so afraid of chaos that they've forgotten how to create. She turned to address Vexthalen directly. You asked if humanity is worthy of the stars. I say the stars don't belong to the worthy, they belong to the brave. To the species willing to look at their own darkness and choose light anyway. To the ones who fall and get back up. To the ones who make mistakes and learn from them. The figure representing humanity began to change, splitting into billions of individual lights, each one a human soul, flawed and beautiful and unique. We're not asking for permission to be perfect, Zara said. We're asking for the chance to try, to fail, to learn and to grow. Because that's what it means to be human. And if that's not worthy of the stars, then maybe the stars need to redefine worthiness. The arena fell completely silent. The mirror of souls dissolved, leaving Zara standing alone once more. After what felt like an eternity, Vexthalen spoke. In all my eons of existence, no one has ever answered the mirror that way. Every species tries to prove they are worthy. You simply refuse to accept the premise. Because it was the wrong question, Zara said simply. Vexthalen's form cycled through a dozen states before settling into something almost humanoid. The third trial is complete. Commander Castellanos has passed all 3 trials. The council must now vote on humanity's final status. The verdict? The council chamber had never been so full. Every delegate who could attend was present, along with observers from neutral species and representatives from civilizations not yet advanced enough for membership. Zara stood in the center once again, but this time she didn't feel alone. Somehow she could feel billions of humans watching through the quantum broadcast, holding their breath, hoping. The Council of Stars will now vote on the status of humanity, Vexthalen announced. Commander Castellanos has passed all 3 trials, a feat accomplished by only one other species in galactic history. However, passage of the trials does not guarantee acceptance. The Council must still determine whether humanity's admission serves the greater good of all civilized species. He paused, his burning eyes sweeping across the assembled delegates. We will hear arguments for and against. Then we vote. Councillor Drax rose first, his scales gleaming in the chamber's light. I argued for humanity's quarantine and I stand by that judgment. Yes, Commander Castellanos demonstrated cleverness in the trials. But cleverness is not wisdom. Humanity is barely 200 years past global warfare. They have possessed nuclear weapons for less than 2 centuries and have come terrifyingly close to using them multiple times. Their expansion into space has been driven by competition and resource depletion, not enlightened exploration. He gestured to a holographic display showing human history. Look at their pattern. Expansion, exploitation, conflict, temporary peace, then the cycle repeats. They have not broken free of this cycle, they've merely extended it to a larger stage. Admitting them to the galactic community risks destabilizing the peace we have maintained for millennia. Murmurs of agreement rippled through many delegates. Zara felt her heart sink. But then Councillor Kromdar rose, his massive stone form somehow conveying dignity despite its alien nature. My colleague speaks from fear and I understand it. But I have learned something in my 7,000 years on this council. Peace maintained through fear of change is not peace, it's stagnation disguised as stability. He turned to address the full assembly. Yes, humanity is young. Yes, they are chaotic. But they are also innovative, adaptable, and capable of profound change. In the span of a single century, They went from warring nations to a unified planetary government. They went from destroying their environment to actively healing it. They went from seeing differences as threats to celebrating them as strengths. Kromdar's voice grew louder. And in 3 trials designed to expose their worst qualities, they showed us something we had forgotten. That true wisdom is not about having all the answers, but about asking better questions. Commander Castellanos didn't just pass the trials, she fundamentally challenged our assumptions about what makes a species worthy. Counselor Nix rose next, her crystalline form pulsing with agitation. Pretty words, Kromdar, but words don't change reality. The Zentari had pretty words too. They promised they would adapt, would learn to understand deception and conflict. They failed because their nature wouldn't allow it. What makes humanity different? Everything, came a new voice. Ambassador Lyrian stepped forward from the observer section, technically a breach of protocol. I invoke my right as a wanderer to speak. Vexthalin nodded, granting permission. I have studied humanity more closely than most here, Lyrian continued. Not through data analysis or projection models, but by walking among them, speaking with them, understanding them. And I have learned that humanity's greatest strength is the very thing you see as weakness, their inconsistency. Lyrian's form shifted, showing images of human history. Humans are not a hive mind moving in lockstep. They are billions of individuals, each capable of making their own choices. Yes, this creates chaos. But it also creates resilience. When one group of humans makes a terrible choice, another group opposes it. When one ideology becomes destructive, another rises to challenge it. They are a species that argues with itself constantly, and that argument, that internal debate, is what drives their evolution. Chaos is not strength, Drax countered. It's liability. Is it? Lyrian challenged. Then explain why every species in this chamber, every civilization we consider stable, has remained essentially unchanged for thousands of years. Explain why we have made no significant scientific breakthroughs in the last millennium. Explain why our art, our philosophy, our very way of thinking has ossified. The chamber erupted in angry protests, but Lyrian pressed on. Humanity has been in space for less than a century, and they've already developed gravity manipulation technology that took us 5,000 years to achieve. They've created AI systems that rival our most advanced computational matrices. They've begun terraforming planets using techniques our scientists dismissed as impossible. Lyrian turned to Vexthalin. You built this council to protect the galaxy from chaos. But in doing so, you've created a different problem. A galaxy that has stopped evolving. Humanity doesn't just deserve admission, we need them. We need their chaos, their innovation, their refusal to accept that things must be done a certain way simply because they've always been done that way. Vexthalin's form crackled with barely contained energy. You speak of need as if we are dying. We are the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. We have achieved peace, prosperity, and stability beyond anything humanity can imagine. And yet, Zara spoke up, when was the last time any of you felt wonder? The chamber fell silent. Zara continued, her voice calm but firm. Ambassador Lyrian is right. You've achieved peace by eliminating anything that might disturb it. You've achieved stability by preventing change. You've built a perfect system that protects you from every danger except one, irrelevance. She walked slowly around the chamber's central platform. I've seen your civilizations through the data you've shared. Beautiful, advanced, peaceful. And completely static. Your population growth is zero. Your artistic movements haven't produced anything genuinely new in centuries. Your scientific papers are just refinements of ancient theories. You're not living, you're just existing. And you think humanity can save us from ourselves? Vexthalin's voice dripped with disdain. Your chaos will cure our stability? No, Zara said. But maybe our chaos will remind you why you reached for the stars in the first place. Not for peace or stability or safety, those are things you build after. You reached for the stars because you wanted to see what was out there. You wanted to discover, to explore, to grow. When did you stop wanting that? She pointed to the viewport showing the galaxy. Out there are a trillion worlds you've never visited because they're too dangerous or too primitive or too chaotic. Out there are phenomena you've never studied because they don't fit your models. Out there are species you've quarantined because they made you uncomfortable. You've built a beautiful cage and called it civilization. This is the arrogance we feared, Drax said. Humanity presumes to lecture civilizations millions of years older. I'm not lecturing, Zara replied. I'm offering partnership. Yes, we're young. Yes, we're chaotic. But we're also willing to try things you've forgotten how to try. We're willing to take risks you're too wise to take. We're willing to fail in ways you're too perfect to fail. She turned to face Vexthalon directly. You asked if humanity is worthy of the stars. I say the real question is, are the stars still worthy of you? Or have you become so focused on maintaining what you've built that you've forgotten how to build anything new? Vexthalon stared at her for a long moment. Then, impossibly, he smiled. You are either the bravest human who ever lived or the most foolish. Possibly both. He raised his hands, calling for the vote. The council has heard all arguments. We will now determine humanity's fate. As is tradition, I will vote last. Let the count begin. One by one, holographic lights appeared above each delegate, green for acceptance, red for quarantine. The counting seemed to take forever. Zara watched the lights accumulate, her heart pounding. Red, green, red, red, green. The chamber filled with color, each one a judgment on her entire species. When the counting finished, the results hung in the air. 547 red, 543 green. 4 votes decided humanity's future. All eyes turned to Vexthalon. A new dawn. High Arbiter Vexthalon stood, his form cycling through every state of matter as if reflecting the weight of his decision. The entire galaxy seemed to hold its breath. Before I cast my vote, he said, his voice resonating through every atom in the chamber, I wish to tell you all a story. The chamber's lights dimmed, and images began to form in the air, ancient, from a time before most species in the room had evolved. 3 million years ago I was not High Arbiter. I was simply Vexthalon, a young member of the Eternals who had just developed interstellar travel. We were the first to reach beyond our world, the first to encounter other species, the first to realize we were not alone. The images showed a younger version of Vexthalon meeting alien species, some beautiful, some terrifying. We made mistakes. Terrible mistakes. We inadvertently caused the extinction of 2 species through cultural contamination. We started a war between 3 others by sharing technology they weren't ready for. We nearly destroyed ourselves trying to help everyone we encountered. Zara saw pain in those ancient scenes, civilizations falling, worlds burning, all despite the best intentions. So we created the Council of Stars, Vexthalon continued. We established rules, trials, protocols, all designed to prevent the mistakes we had made. We told ourselves we were protecting the galaxy. And we were. But Commander Castellanos has made me realize something I had forgotten. In protecting the galaxy from chaos, we may have also protected it from growth. He turned to Zara. When you refused to press the button in the first trial, you reminded us that sometimes the moral choice is to reject the premise entirely. When you confronted your species' violent history in the second trial, you showed us that acknowledging flaws is the first step to transcending them. And when you faced the mirror of souls in the third trial, you taught us that worthiness is not a state of being but a continuous choice. Vexthalon's form solidified into something almost human, a gesture of respect. I founded this council out of fear disguised as wisdom. I have spent 3 million years trying to create a perfect galaxy by eliminating imperfection. But you have shown me that perfection is not the absence of chaos, it is the ability to grow through chaos. He raised his hand and a green light appeared above him. I vote to accept humanity into the galactic community. The chamber exploded with sound, cheers from some, protests from others, shock from everyone. The final count stood at 548 for acceptance, 547 for quarantine. By a single vote, humanity had earned the stars. But Vexthalon raised his hands for silence. However, he said, and the celebration died, acceptance comes with conditions. Humanity will be admitted on a probationary status lasting 100 years. During this time, you will be assigned a council of mentors from established species. You will be subject to additional oversight. And any violation of galactic law will result in immediate quarantine. Zara nodded. We accept those terms. Furthermore, Vexthalon continued, I am proposing a fundamental change to the council itself. If humanity has taught us anything, it is that we have become too rigid, too afraid of change. Therefore, I propose that every 50 years, we conduct a galaxy-wide review where our laws, our methods, and even our own worthiness to lead are questioned and evaluated. Shocked murmurs rippled through the assembly. Counselor Drax looked like he might explode. You're proposing we subject ourselves to the same trials we impose on others? Exactly, Vexthalon said. If we are to judge others, we must also be willing to be judged. Power without accountability leads to tyranny, no matter how benevolent our intentions. Counselor Kromdar's rumbling voice carried approval. I second this proposal. I third it, Ambassador Lyrian added. Slowly, hesitantly, other voices joined in. Not all of them. Drax and his faction remained firmly opposed, but enough. Change had come to the Council of Stars, carried on the wings of a single species' refusal to accept the status quo. Hours later, after endless ceremonies and formal declarations, Zara finally returned to her quarters. She collapsed into a chair, suddenly exhausted beyond anything she'd ever felt. Her communicator chimed. Admiral Chen's weathered face appeared, but he was grinning wider than she'd ever seen. "We did it," he said simply. "Earth is celebrating. Every city, every colony, everyone. They're calling you a hero." "I'm not a hero," Zara said tiredly. "I just refuse to give up." "That's what makes you human," Chen replied. "We have a tradition of refusing to give up even when we probably should. Speaking of which, your daughter wants to talk to you." The screen shifted and Sophia's face appeared, her 8-year-old eyes shining with tears and joy. "Mom, you did it. You really did it. Can I really be an astronaut now? Can I really visit other planets with aliens?" Zara felt her own tears starting. "Yes, baby. You can visit 100 planets. 1,000. The whole galaxy is open to us now." "Because you were brave," Sophia said. "No," Zara corrected gently. "Because humanity was brave. Because your grandmother was brave when she worked on the Mars colony. Because your great-grandfather was brave when he fought to end the resource wars. Because millions of humans before me made choices that led us here. I just got to be the one standing in the spotlight." After she said goodbye to Sophia, Zara walked to her viewport and stared out at the galaxy. Somewhere out there, human ships were receiving the news. Colonists were cheering. Children were dreaming of alien worlds they could now visit. Scientists were preparing for collaboration with civilizations millions of years old. But Zara also knew the challenges ahead. Some species would resent humanity's admission. Others would test them, looking for any excuse to push for quarantine. And within humanity itself, there would be those who saw this as permission to spread without restraint, who would need to be reminded that acceptance came with responsibility. Ambassador Lyrian materialized beside her, having phased through the door again. "You should lock those," Zara said mildly. "Where would be the fun in that?" Lyrian gazed out at the stars with her. "You know this is just the beginning, right? The real test starts now." "I know," Zara said. "But we'll handle it the same way we handled the trials, one impossible challenge at a time." "The Council will be watching," Lyrian warned. "One mistake, one incident, and Drax will push for immediate quarantine. He has a lot of support among the old guard." "Then we'd better not make mistakes," Zara replied. "Or at least, we'd better make sure we learn from them faster than anyone expects." Lyrian laughed, a sound like wind chimes. "You really don't understand the significance of what you've done, do you? You didn't just earn humanity a place among the stars. You reminded the entire galaxy what it means to evolve. The Council hasn't changed its fundamental nature in over 1,000,000 years. In a single week, you made them question everything. So what happens now?" Zara asked. "Now?" Lyrian's form shimmered with something that might have been excitement. "Now we see if an ancient galaxy can remember how to grow. Now we see if chaos and order can coexist. Now we see if the youngest species in the Council can teach the oldest one something new." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the stars. Somewhere among those distant lights, the first human ambassadors were preparing to visit alien worlds. The first exchange students were packing for journeys to civilizations beyond imagination. The first joint research projects were being planned, bringing together human innovation and alien wisdom. And in the council chambers for the first time in eons, delegates were arguing not about enforcement and restrictions, but about possibilities and potential. Change had come to the galaxy, carried on human shoulders. "You know what the best part is?" Zara said quietly. "What's that?" 50 years from now, when the Council faces its first galaxy-wide review, they're going to realize that accepting humanity wasn't the end of something, it was the beginning. And by then we'll have influenced them as much as they've influenced us. The galaxy they judge themselves against will be fundamentally different from the one they built. Lyrian tilted their head. "Is that a threat or a promise?" Zara smiled. "It's neither. It's just what humans do. We change things. We can't help it. It's our nature. And that," Lyrian said softly, "is exactly why the galaxy needed you." Far below, on Earth, Sofia Castellanos stood in her backyard, looking up at the night sky. She could barely comprehend that somewhere up there, her mother had just won humanity's place among the stars. But she understood one thing clearly: the stars that had always seemed so distant, so unreachable, were now hers to explore. She whispered a promise to the night sky, a promise that millions of human children were making at that very moment across Earth and its colonies. I'm coming. Wait for me. And the stars, old and cold and distant, seemed somehow warmer, as if they'd been waiting for humanity all along. 3 million years ago, the Eternals had reached for the stars and built a civilization dedicated to preventing chaos. 100,000 years ago, the Vorlaxians had joined them, adding their stone-solid stability. 50,000 years ago, the Thicians contributed their perfect harmony. And now, in the present moment, humanity added something the galaxy had forgotten it needed: the beautiful, terrifying, essential chaos of beings who refused to accept that anything was impossible. The Council of Stars had voted. The verdict was in. Humanity's unlikely triumph was complete. But the real story, the story of how a young, chaotic species reminded an ancient galaxy how to dream, was just beginning.